visas, which has gotten really ugly on social media. Elon Musk obviously supports them, says the tech companies need them. He was an H-1B visa holder himself at one point. In the middle of this fight, he's referred to people within the GOP who are hateful, unrepentant racists. In another post on X, he said this: take a big step back and blank yourself in the face. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend. On the other side of this, we've got longtime Trump ally Steve Bannon, who says the whole thing is a scam that's hurting American workers. And he adds this: we are going to win this. They are going to surrender. They are not going to continue to destroy American citizens and American engineering by this scam. And this is a total, let me repeat, if you didn't get it, it's a total and complete scam. Now, President Trump brought together a coalition of all kinds of groups and people and thinkers to win. How does he now manage them in the middle of a fight like this that's gone very public?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge this is a very important debate to have, and it's happening on X right now, which is a free and open platform. It's something that I fought for when I was Attorney General of Missouri. We sued the Biden administration for their censorship regime. And so I think this is an important, thoughtful debate that's happening. But the context that we need to, I think, keep in mind here is that the American workers have been left behind by this economy. Many factory jobs have been sent overseas, and I think the abuses of the H-1B program have been evident, where you have sort of the sons and daughters of those factory workers who lost their jobs, got white-collar jobs as accountants, and then are, training their replacements, the foreign workers who are undercutting their wages. So I think the solution here, President Trump has actually articulated as 2020, is to reform that system and get rid of the abuses, make it merit-based, and make sure that we're not undercutting wages and having, Americans replace or train their foreign replacements. And also keep in mind here that the big debate here and the big issue that's coming is actually the border. And we have 15 million people here, Shannon, that are here illegally, that Joe Biden and the Democrats have let in through an open borders policy. These people who are writing white papers for liberal think tanks were writing policy for the United States of America. And now we have crime, we have fentanyl, we have a national security risk. So the first order of business, I think, for the Trump administration is the deportations that are going to begin on day one, the executive orders that are coming. I do think President Trump has talked about reforming this system, the H-1B system, but the broader issue here is mass migration that has undercut jobs, wages, and increased housing costs. So I think that's where the focus is going to be. That's what the mandate President Trump got, was to secure our southern border, and you heard Tom Homan talk about how he's going to go do that.
Okay, so I want to get to immigration more specifically, but before we leave this H-1B visa issue, the New York Post had a conversation with President Trump yesterday, and here's what they say. They say he supports immigration visas for highly skilled workers, appearing to side with Elon Musk. Quote, I have many H-1B visas on my properties. I've been a big believer in H-1B. I have used it many times. It's a great program. He's been critical of it in the past. And to be fair, the New York Times seems to question whether he was talking about these H-1B visas, because they say he's used H-2B visas and H-2A on a lot of his Trump properties, but they didn't see use of the H-1B visa. So I'm not sure that that's been clarified yet. But he's been critical about this. You talk about undercutting the American worker, and that seems to be the biggest argument against that, is that people who are brought over as foreign workers are necessarily supplanting American workers who may be qualified, may want these jobs, but the foreign workers are paid less. So I want to talk through some possible legislative changes to this, because the group that is the Federation for American Immigration has talked about things they'd want to see changed that possibly you in Congress could tackle. Not allowing the H-1B visa to be a pathway to citizenship, preventing employers from paying those foreign workers less than Americans in the same jobs, requiring proof from employers that they first sought and offered these positions to qualified Americans, and that they want tougher enforcement mechanisms, investigations, and random audits. Is that the kind of thing you think that your colleagues, whether just you as Republicans or in a bipartisan way, could get behind?
Well, I think there's been a lot of abuse, and that's what's driving, Shannon, a lot of this discussion right now, is the abuse that's happened with this, where you see qualified Americans being denied a lot of these jobs because a company can go out and hire cheaper labor from a foreign country, right? That is really the abuse. And so the reforms that President Trump put forward in 2020, which, by the way, were canceled by Joe Biden, canceled by Joe Biden had to do with right now it's a lottery. There's really no merit to this. It's just a lottery. So you see companies trying to game the system, IT companies sometimes putting 30,000 applications in, hoping to get 10,000 from a random lottery. That is a system I think that needs to be reformed. President Trump's talked about that. And then also undercutting wages by bringing in somebody, under a loophole, for example, you can't have it be the same employer, but it's a consulting firm. So those are the kinds of things, and I think the starting point that President Trump articulated when he wanted to reform this very broken system back in 2020 that Joe Biden nixed. He came in under the auspices of undoing everything that was President Trump, including the 94 executive orders he issued, getting rid of Remain in Mexico, stopping the construction of the border wall, all the things that President Trump was trying to do to shore up the border and make sure we were putting American workers first. And I think you're going to continue to see that. That's the mandate that President Trump got. It's what he talked about on the campaign trail. Is we have to, and Shannon, one last point here. This is a longer term conversation too. We have to invest in American workers. I think what people get frustrated by is they see $175 billion going to Ukraine. They see millions of dollars going to other countries to teach them about DEI. Meanwhile, our education system has completely failed in many ways, and there hasn't been a focus on the American worker. And I think that's this multi-ethnic working class party, the Republican Party is now led by President Trump. I think there's a lot of ground to be made up here in putting American workers first.
Okay, and to the point, the broader conversation about immigration, the president has talked about putting a stop to illegal immigration, getting control of the southern border, but also deporting potentially millions of people who are already here. I want to play something that your colleague, Senator Alex Padilla, says about actually getting those people out of the country.
So the next time we hear Republicans say that they support Trump's plan to deport waves of undocumented immigrants, let's be clear about what comes with that. Higher prices for American families. They're supporting the forced removal of millions of hardworking community members, 80% of whom have lived here 10 years or more.
So what do you say to critics who say this is going to tear apart existing families and it's actually going to hurt the U.S. economy by taking millions of workers out of the mix?
Well, I would point out to my friend from California that Bill Clinton and Barack Obama deported 17 million people. Okay, so the idea of deporting people who are here illegally is not a new concept. In fact, the policy and the law of the United States of America since, for 200 years is if you come here illegally, you are detained. If you don't have a valid reason, like asylum, and by the way, 9 out of 10 asylum claims are bogus, then you are deported. That is how we have always operated. Only recently, quite frankly, in the last 4 years, when the radical left has taken over the White House, and these people do not believe in borders. They think they're arbitrary lines on a map, that we're all world citizens and everybody should be able to come here. They could put up in a luxury hotel in New York at the expense of taxpayers. They look the other way when an illegal immigrant sets a woman on fire at a subway. This is all part, and by the way, you don't need to be a citizen to be counted in the census. This was the goal for them all along. The truth is we have laws in this country. They're just not being enforced. So President Trump's going to come in. He's going to enforce those laws, bring back Remain in Mexico, which creates a disincentive for the cartels to traffic people because they're waiting. The waiting room is in Mexico, not here in the United States, where they're just released into the interior, never to be seen again, and given a court date 10 years from now. That's what's happening right now, Shannon. That's the system that's totally broken. So President Trump is actually just going to enforce existing laws and deport people who are here illegally. And so I think that's coming on day one. I think you're going to see a flurry of executive orders to that point, and the American people want that. You see that among Hispanic voters, you see that among black voters, you see that among white voters. Every socioeconomic group supported that. The exit polling supports that. That's why President Trump won. He was very clear about this, and I think it's a big important part about his mandate that he received.
Yeah, and we saw that in our Fox News voter analysis, as you mentioned as well. We know there's an ambitious agenda ahead for those first 100 days. We know there are confirmation battles to come that you'll be in the middle of as well. So, Senator, we hope you'll come back. In the meantime, Happy New Year.
We'll do it.